Hey guys, this is Mitch with the Department of Bad Ideas, again! And if you hadn't seen it already, I did an unboxing of a Damascus Steel, or a Damascus Steel style of folding knife, and I absolutely love it. And for those of you that haven't seen it, I'll show the knife really briefly. This is a gorgeous knife. And if you notice the pattern on the blade on this, this is the general look of Damascus Steel. It either looks like this with the waviness, or they might make it to have little bubbles in it kind of looking, or there's names for each different kind of pattern that are made for Damascus Steel. And I mentioned that I wanted to tie this in with Warframe somehow, and I didn't because I kind of had a little bit of a mangasm over the blade because this thing is freaking gorgeous. I love it. I've cleaned it off by now, so not nearly as greasy as it was before, because the guy that did this knows to protect the blade, and he put way too much knife oil on this, which does no harm to it. It just makes it really greasy. So I wiped it down, applied a little bit of my own stuff, and it's not as bad anymore. But what I wanted to talk about was this. I'd really like to see this Damascus Steel show up in Warframe, because historically, the myths and legend behind the Damascus Steel, from my understanding, is that it is a blade that is hard, keeps its sharpness, but flexible enough to be a functional blade metal, which the general rule of thumb with metals and weapons, as far as swords go, is you either go harder and more rigid, or you go softer and more flexible. Now, these each have their own uses. You're going to want something harder for a smaller blade, like, for example, this is 1095 carbon steel. It's very rigid. It's not bending anytime soon because this doesn't really receive enough force for that to be an issue. But if you pull out something, yes, I'm pulling all of my blades out right now. You get to something this length. Actually, even then, this is also, I believe, 1095 carbon steel. It's still pretty rigid. It's not going to bend anytime soon, but you start getting to this length and when using it for combat, when you take a swing and you hit something, you want the blade to flex. You want it to bend a bit. That way it doesn't snap in two, because that's obviously pretty bad. This is more of a utility tool kukri machete, so not much of an issue here. This has got the thickness to compensate. But with the standard blade, which is fairly thin, you need that flexibility. So Damascus Steel was basically, the idea was it's the best of both worlds. And it turns out that the blades we found historically that are Damascus Steel, fighting with the sheath right here, the ones that we found that are Damascus Steel, it turns out the way that they forged them is that they would use plant fibers in them. I mentioned this in the previous video, by the way, so if you've heard that, sorry. But they forged them with plant fibers mixed in there. And my camera forgot how to focus because it is clearly drunk. Focus in on my face, camera. I have no idea what my camera is doing right now. Focus on this, please. There we go. This is my magical focus machete. I knew I'd find a use for you. But, oh god, I'm going to have to pull a machete out to focus my camera now. Oh lord. Anyways, back on topic. What they found when they would examine them and they cut them and check the internal bits of it, is that there was the equivalent of carbon nanotubes inside of them from plant fibers, because they would break down into carbon, and that's basically what they'd form into when they get spread out between the multiple types of metal that give it that wavy design, those multiple color designs, and it made them obscenely durable while still retaining the flexibility. For reference, for those of you that aren't aware, carbon nanotubes is something that we only recently really figured out how to make, and we're still working on implementation of this. I'm not really too well read on carbon nanotubes, so bear with me here. But basically, this is the kind of stuff you're going to see on like spacecraft, so it's kind of durable. Spacecraft, they take a lot more abuse than people realize. But back on topic with Warframe. Because of this mythology to how powerful these blades are, I would love to see this bleed its way into Warframe itself, either as a skin or as a style of weapon. Now, typically, the ones I've seen before, these are mostly on like more sabers, because Middle East, a lot of their blades are curved blades, which are really good for swinging on horseback, camelback, whatever. And just in general, they're good handling blades, really good draw cuts with the way that they're swung. And this could be something where they can either introduce it as not as a weapon type, but as just kind of like a theme of weapons, like they did with the ether weapons. they could do a Damascus Steel set of weaponry. Or they could just do this as skins, because the Warframe weapons are already pretty obscene anyways. Like, personally, I see the Skana and the Cronus. These are perfect for this kind of look. And it would look awesome, personally. I really like the crazy wavy design to it that's also functional and has a purpose. For example, the knife here is nickel and carbon steel. Now, normally they mix nickel in with carbon steel to make it more, to make it tougher. This one obviously is, or the metal in this one's 1095 carbon steel, so it's 90. I might be wrong on this. 95% steel and 5% carbon. Or is it the other way around? I think it's that. Not 100% on that. I have to double check that. I only recently learned what that meant, so. But yeah, having that kind of design would just, it would look great, and from a functionality standpoint, it would make sense. And you could apply a lot of that mythology to it that, you know, from what I read, apparently, you quench the blade in blood when you need to cool it down, and you mix the plant fibers in there, which, in Warframe's lore, we've got the Orokin weeds that are taking over everything on Earth. We can take, okay, reuse some of these Orokin weeds, which are probably absolutely crazy durable, because it's the Orokin. They make things out of gold because they can. So they probably have access to some crazy fiber from those plants that they genetically modified. So there you go. There's our plant fibers for the blades. And it's like, this is how we can get this material to work. And I don't know, forge it using Warframe energy or something like that. Or, I don't know, some unique material or cryotic or something like that. Something like that. I don't know. Lore! Use it! Make materials happen, Damascus Steel. Anyways, gushing aside, that's just my thoughts on the subject for Warframe. Because I mean, I am kind of on a little bit of a Damascus Steel kick right now because I've been going through eBay again, which is a terrible idea because I'm spending money I shouldn't be spending. But it's a lot of fun, and I am starting a little bit of a knife collection. So there we go, Damascus Steel and Warframe. So without dragging on much longer, because this video is much too long, this is Mitch with the Department of Bad Ideas, signing off. Also, I will get Arsenal to you guys very soon.